Hello everyone, welcome to Lukmaan IAS. We are starting GS3 Economics lecture series. So the idea of this lecture series is we want to provide you the most rigorous, I want to emphasize the word rigorous, GS3 Economics lecture series, right? And this will be a year-long lecture series, and this will cover not only the prelims concepts but also mains. See, what is our main idea? Here, main idea is to focus on concepts. Right. Let's say if you observe the prelims question paper, they are no more, limited to what is this scheme, that scheme, they are conceptual in nature. So we understand the fact that for UPSC economics part, you need not to be an economist. Even the GS3 economics syllabus, economics optional, that is non-mathematical in nature. So even then, see, what is required for GS3 economy is sensibilities of economy, and how that sensibilities develop. Let's say you understand how to, you can read and understand economic survey. See, reading is different and understanding economic survey is different. Let's say you can understand the executive summary of global economic outlook. That according to my opinion is a document even something higher than Indian economic surveys. Okay, let's say Niti Aayog reports are easy to understand. But can you write like the planning commission documents were written, right? 5 year. 5 year plans. They do not believe that they are, irrelevant now. Even if you today you read that health and education sector, you will get a lot of benefits, right? You will develop that writing style, that thought of a policymaker, economist, which are required for UPSC. So that is one thing we will be focusing on, concepts. Second thing, we will make it the most rigorous course. We claim it again, most rigorous course in the UPSC coaching space. We are not limiting only ourselves to we say it very openly that in no other institute you will find a more rigorous course than ours for GS3 economics, and we said we want to emphasize it again and again. See, there are many teachers who are teaching economics, but they lack that foundation. Till one does not have that foundation of economics, statistics, mathematics, one cannot read. One cannot understand the concepts. So that foundation is important, right? So this is our plan. So today, what we will start with something very simple. Let me start with a story, right? I will start with a story. And then we will go into concept like GDP, accounting, and related concept. See, now let me say one thing. Even for when you read economics syllabus, macroeconomics is more required than microeconomics for UPSC, right? You must understand the concept like what is GDP, money, right? Interest rate, inflation. Okay, you need not to delve into into depth, right? But the thought should be very clear. That is important. Okay, this is one thing. And when I say the thought, if you can understand economic surveys, let's say what is the test? Somebody says, somebody want to test whether I will score 115 marks in mains in GS3, or second thing, whether I will correct the 15 to 20 question which you get in prelims for economics, whether you are able to do them correctly. So my only test is, do you understand economic surveys properly? Do you understand PYQs properly? If you understand that, you will do this. Okay, this is the one thing. The story why I want to start with is, okay, first let us understand the phases of economics. There were mainly three phases. One was the mercantilism. Then came classical, then neoclassical, okay, and then Keynes, right? Keynes, that is cool, and more or less we can say to some extent, nowadays we are following both mercantilism and Keynes. That is the right observation. Okay, some principles of Keynes are not followed anymore, right? So what happened, what happened this mercantilism? This is mainly 16th to 17th century era, 16th to 17th century. Here mainly two principles were in, what were the thoughts? They had mainly two principles. One, It is called, every country wanted to accumulate precious metal. They thought that if you will have precious metal, this is also called bullionism. Bullionism means, bullion you know in gold, then they want to accumulate precious metal. And how they will accumulate precious metal? When you have more export, when you export more, right? So when you export something, you will earn the foreign currency, and how that will be paid? In gold and silver. That time, all the currency was very limited, so in gold and silver, right? So every country will try to accumulate the precious metal. This was the one thing. Second thing was of the mercantilism. The second concept was state intervention. State intervention was required for what? To produce the demand of to stimulate consumption, right? To create the market for that particular good. So this was the view in let's say some country is producing something. Let's say some country produce let's say during that time raw cotton is there, right? Let's say there is no demand for raw cotton, then what the farmers will do? So it was the state duty to produce that market. Okay, this was the we so far we have not gone into the details, but first I want to just tell you the broad view. Then came the classical school, right? Classical school had a long era, and the famous economist like Adam Smith, his famous book Wealth of Nation, right? Then David Ricardo gave a wonderful principle: comparative advantage and absolute advantage was a contribution of Adam Smith as well. But comparative advantage, the principle which I don't want to discuss it now, but you just understand how let's say let's say there is a teacher. Let's say there is a teacher and there is a, let's say, worker, right? The two people are there. So what is the meaning? I want to how to this one. How to take this one? I just want to remove. Okay. Is there a way to clear it? Okay. Anyway, I think there should be some shortcut to clear this board. Okay. But anyway, so what this comparative advantage thing is? In short, I will tell you. Comparative advantage. Let's say there is a person here. Let's say teacher. There is a worker, right? Teacher might be good in, let's say, teaching, right? And worker might be good in, let's say, domestic course, right? And their efficiencies are given by some numbers. Let's say these are numbers, Let's say teacher efficiency is 10, in course is 5, and here worker efficiency is, let's say, 5, and daily course is 10. So then a question arranged, let's say they have limited amount of resources, right? Limited amount of resources. So how much work, whether teacher should do only teaching and no daily course, or the worker should do only daily course and no teaching. So when the country do this kind of work, let's say Ghana is good, very efficient in producing pineapples. So Ghana will focus on pineapples. Let's say India is very efficient in IT work. So India will focus on IT work. Then they will do the trade. So this comparative advantage, very, very important. So in classical school, who was there mainly? Adam Smith in Wealth of Nation. Then David Ricardo. Okay. David Ricardo. Right. You see, just quoting the name of the book is nothing, right? Let's say, if you say Wealth of Nation, what it means, right? And in fact, his most famous book is not Wealth of Nation. His most famous book is the study of political sentiments. If I can recall, if I'm naming the book well, that book was the main book. Then came this book, right? So, see, I would suggest once your UPSC thing is done, try to invest some time in these chapters. When you read the few essays from the Wealth of Nation, when you read theory of political sentiments, when you read the original research paper written by David Ricardo for comparative advantage, you will get a very different understanding. Okay, so let me just also tell you their books. Their books were David Ricardo wrote Principle of Political Economy in 1817, right? And then this is very, very famous. You must have also studied in John Stuart Mill, right? John Stuart Mill. And he also wrote Principles of Political Economy. Principles of Political Economy. Don't worry about, these notes you will get in the YouTube link. YouTube link, we will upload it. So this is your classical school. After that came along with neoclassical school. And what happened in neoclassical school? Mainly, Professor Alfred Marshall was the main, proponent there. What he said was not very different from what the classical school said. Classical school focused on two different aspects. Classical school. So you have understood mercantilism school, right? Mainly Bullianism and state intervention. They were the two things. What was the important aspect of classical school? They said no state intervention. State should not intervene. See what they said. See, in fact, I will read you a line which John Stuart Mill wrote while criticizing mercantilism. Let me see if I can get that line. I think yes. Okay, yes, this is the line. John Stuart Mill, right? John Stuart Mill, who was a classical school economist, what he writes, in opposition to these palpable absurdities, it was triumphantly established a political economist that consumption never need encouragement. See what the John Stuart Mill is trying to say, that consumption by public will never need encouragement. Why he's using this phrase? Because what the mercantilism said, that for every commodity you produce, you have to create a market, right? They said, right? You have to create market for every commodity. But what the John Stuart Mill, who is a part of a classical school, said, this is an absurdity. See, you create some good, you will create that good only when there is a market, when there is a demand. So, you do not, what he said, do not try to put the cart before the, horse, right? So, what you have to do, what he said, that there is no need to create market for some commodity. That means there is no need of state intervention. So, in fact, this was the second point. So, state intervention not required. First thing, it was based on real factors. And what is really the keywords here? Really the keyword here. See, what happened in mercantilism school, what you noticed? Real you're asking. Real, I will explain real, but for that you have to go back to the mercantile school. What happened, what if we studied in mercantile school? They were mainly concerned about accumulation of a precious metal, right? Mercantile school also believed that money was important. Let's say somebody has $10 in their pocket, right? So what is the intrinsic value of that money? आपको पता है वो क्या वो there was demonetization. Let's say, okay, so some situation come, government all of a sudden says that this currency is no more acceptable in a country. So what is the value of that money which I have in pocket? Almost zero. Nobody will accept it. So there is no intrinsic value of money according to classical school. But mercantilism believed that if government pushes money into the system, it will stimulate demand. Right? So whether money has a intrinsic value or not, that is immaterial question. What is when you push into the money system? Let's say RBI the expansionary policies, right? So mercantilism also had a similar view. Okay. Now, but classical schools, what he said, money is only a medium of exchange. This is the keyword. Classical schools, mercantilism said money is only a medium of exchange. There is no role of demand stimulation of money, right? Now coming to the real factor. The real factor, let's say, give you an example. So the real is the key. Whenever you write about classical school, you have to put real into double quotes, because real, the meaning is what the real means here. Let's say in this economy, I produce some good, right? And there is let's say there is an organization which gets that by selling bonds, and they, let's say they establish a factory, something like this is the real production, right? Let's say somebody accumulates knowledge, and through that knowledge they become more efficient. That is the real, right? So these such factors are called real factors in classical school. Okay, that's fine. So you are okay with the story. of mercantilism, classical and neoclassical. Neoclassical period, mainly your Alfred Marshall and A.C. Pigoy, right? So Alfred Marshall wrote Principle of Economics in 1920, and but again their principles are not. There is some difference, and what are those differences that we will take once we have discussed, terms like expenditure multiplier, all those things. After 3-4 lectures, we will go into that, right? And
present time, who is following the classical method?
see, present time.
Which country, I mean?
See, okay, which country? The reality is that no country follows a particular school, right? Let's say you ask India. See, can we say India is, capitalist society or socialist or no mixed? India is mixed economy, right? So what happens is generally we cannot say that one country follow only one school. It is a mix of thoughts, right? Mix of thought.
But some communist country,
it's very difficult to categorize like that. So you have understood story till neoclassical. Now comes the Keynes. And why he came into the picture? Due to the depression. See what happens when a society is in trouble. Let's say everybody is unemployed here. People cannot get job. Their families breaking. So that time, the ideas become most important, right? That's what happened during the World War I, II. See, even in management schools, the principle of Taylor, Fayol, Weber, why it became important? Because their theories were helpful in World War I and World War II, right? Similarly, when the Keynes gave his principles, he wrote a book. He wrote a wonderful book. It is called The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money. His full name was John Maynard Keynes. He was from England. He was not from US, right? He studied there, but he applied his, his principles were used to stimulate the economy during the 1930s. See, you have to understand what was happening in 1930s. Okay, I give you one principle what Keynes said. Keynes said the investment is very, very important, right? अभी आप देखते हो न्यूज़ में कि whenever RBI, now MPC, now the right term is MPC, increases interest rate, government will go, will be stressed. कि why are you increasing interest rate? Okay, interest rate बढ़ने से क्या होता है ना? See, ऐसा नहीं है कि but government is always in trouble. It doesn't feel good. Why? Let's say एक तो GDP आपका interest rate is many relation, right, with investment. Okay, interest rate का एक relation है investment से. Okay, so what Keynes said, the investment is very, very important, right? So, but why he observed this thing? Because during the 1930s, mainly two presidents of USA. One is called Hoover era, and after Hoover came Roosevelt, right? Roosevelt. What they did, by country ko to they have to get the country out of the depression. So they, took many policy decisions, and which proved a disaster. Let's say they increased tax. That time the need was to do investment and reduce the tax. What did they increase tax? Why they increase tax? Because let's say if you do not increase tax, budget deficit will be there. See, even when you अभी आपका report आया था ना, NK Singh committee का FRBM review committee report, right? What they said, debt is the anchor, because debt is a big problem, right? Country में debt ज़्यादा नहीं होना चाहिए. तो debt को वो भी कहते हैं ना, आपका fiscal deficit को manage करना है. We have to manage the fiscal deficit. So interest rate जो है, right? Interest जितना आपका interest payment हो रहा है, इंडिया में जो interest payment होता है ना आपके जो debt पे, that is almost more than 17 to 18% of GDP है. कितना है? 17 to 80% of GDP. Okay, और आपके जो fresh borrowings है, वो भी approximately 17 to 18%. Fresh borrowing का मतलब जो आप public से money लेते हो government, right? जैसे सबसे उसका the main part is your treasury bills. Treasury bills हो गया जो investment, right? So that is almost 17-18% क्या है आपका fresh loans है, और 17-18% आप किस में पे कर रहे हो? Every year for the interest payment on what the debt that the country has accumulated. So India is kind of in a debt trap. That's what the NK Singh committee observed. India is in debt trap. तो उस debt trap से कैसे निकलेगा? और ये pandemic की बात तो और ज़्यादा चला गया है, because fiscal deficit rose all of a sudden. So to get the country out of debt trap is a big thing, right? So why I raise this point? Why the Keynes principle became important? Because both Hoover and Roosevelt take very drastic steps, which were not encouraged. So what then came the need that you have to have some data, right? क्योंकि उसमें data भी नहीं होता था. तो यहाँ से जेनेसिस, तो अब आपको स्टोरी क्लियर हुई, यहाँ से जेनेसिस हुई किसकी, जीडीपी मेजरमेंट की, राइट, जो हम बोलते हैं ना ग्रॉस डोमेस्टिक प्रोडक्ट, ये नीड थी भाई, अदरवाइज क्यों somebody will go and मेजर जीडीपी, व्हाट इज द नीड, जब तक ह्यूमन को नीड नहीं होती वो काम नहीं करते, राइट। तो दिस नीड बिकेम बिकॉज पीपल वर इन डिप्रेशन, economic depressions, psychological depression for almost a decade. Okay, so then they decided, no, we have to measure the economy. Then now GDP measurement, I tell you what, in simple terms, what is GDP. Whenever you write about GDP, NCERT has also given wonderful definition. You write GDP is the sum product of all the current goods and services produced at market price. तो आपके दो कीवर्ड होने चाहिए, क्या, वैल्यू ऑफ ऑल गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज, ऑल करंट लगा लीजिए आप, करंट एट मार्केट प्राइसेस। ओके, दिस इज द फर्स्ट मोस्ट. नाउ you must know 2-3 terms. You must know GNP. What is GNP? You must know national income. Okay. And और क्या पोजीशन में, यानी डेप्रिसिएशन को इसी में आ जाएगा. So once you have understood this thing part of GDP, right? This is simple definition. इसको मेजरमेंट करने के मेथड होते हैं, इनकम मेथड, एक्सपेंडिचर मेथड, दैट विल बी टेल. बट द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज यू मस्ट आल्सो नो व्हाट जीडीपी इज नॉट. आपने बोला, जैसे मान लो फॉर एग्जांपल इकोनॉमी में एक बॉटल प्रोड्यूस हुई, राइट, दिस इज अ रियल प्रोडक्शन, दिस इज लाइक अ रियल फैक्टर्स ऑफ क्लासिकल स्कूल. इकोनॉमी में किसी ने नॉलेज गेन की, इकोनॉमी का हम लोग कहते हैं नॉलेज जो गेन होता है ना, यू आर प्रोड्यूसिंग नथिंग, बट दैट इज द बिगेस्ट कंट्रीब्यूशन टू जीडीपी. जब किसी की व्हेन समबडी रीड्स बुक, कुछ दिखता है कुछ प्रोड्यूस हुआ नहीं, but that is the biggest addition to the economy. So, because when you read, when you study, you become more efficient. तो उससे क्या है, जो कार्य करने की जो क्षमता होती है ना, बढ़ जाती है, राइट. सो व्हाट इज हैपनिंग इन इंडियन इकोनॉमी नाउ डेज, द रियल ग्रोथ इन द जीडीपी इज कमिंग थ्रू इकोनॉमिक आउटपुट रेशियो रेदर देन कैपेक्स. और ये एक प्रॉब्लम भी है, यानी कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर की वजह से ग्रोथ नहीं आ रही है. कहाँ से आ रही है, आपके इफिशियंसी से. Humans are being more efficient now. ठीक है. So GDP एक तो सिंपल सा हो गया डेफिनेशन. GDP में क्या क्या नहीं मेजर होता है, you must know. GDP does not measure under illegal, let's say illegal or underground activities, right? It's a drug sub, right? That is not gambling and all those things is not measured. Then for something for which there is no market, let's say there is a homemaker, right, woman working in a home, right, उनका there is no market for that, let's say mother or sister working in a home, उसका कोई मेजर करता नहीं, that is still not contributed in the GDP. But yes, now it is not to say that they are not absolutely counted, but now the GDP measure is also evolving. The economists start trying to account it. Then the third thing is, so GDP is not a, happiness. GDP is not happiness, right? Let's say countries like Bhutan, they have, happiness index, right? But that is different. So these are some limitations. So why it is important? It gives you a number. Let's say when you see the report, economic surveys, global economic outlooks, they focus on GDP because it tells you, it puts in a number, right? So that's what. Now coming to the GNP part. Okay. What happens in, what is gross, GNP is gross national product. What is the difference between domestic? See, that the difference is contained in that, acronym. The GDP is domestic and GNP is national. So there are some people who, let's say this is India, right? There are some persons from US or different foreign countries who are working here. And some Indians are working outside, right? When you reduce the, effect of those from foreign countries, working in and add the, value developed by Indians in other countries. That is called GNP. Indirectly, you can write it, GNP is equal to GDP plus minus international transactions. Okay, this international transaction means, what transactions? The people working in, Indian people working outside and the foreign nation working in India. Okay, this is your GNP, right? Then the third thing you must know is the national income. Okay, how do you calculate national income? National income is given by GDP, okay, sorry, GNP minus depreciation, okay, depreciation minus statistical discrepancies. Depreciation, what is the meaning of depreciation? In GDP, you must know we do not count the intermediate goods, right? Yet, let's say you understand capital good. Capital good means, let's say you established a machinery. You bought a machinery. So, उसका मान लो यूजफुल लाइफ स्पैन है 10 years. आपने 1 लाख का खरीदा तो आप डेली हर साल उसको यदि स्ट्रेट लाइन मेथड इज मेथड ऑफ यूज फॉर डेप्रिसिएशन decreasing proportionally, straight line wise, right? Straight line. So when you use a straight line method, see there straight line method for depreciation. Okay, what it means that let's say the value of the capital stock is 500 and the 5 years the lifespan. So every year you will depreciate by 100. Okay, that is a straight line method. So how you get national income? You from GNP you reduce depreciation and from that you take out statistical discrepancy. Statistical discrepancy is an important thing. Okay, I would like to pay you attention what it means, right? See, when you're let's say you have data, right? You have some data and let's say you are measuring something. Let's say you are measuring poverty from two different sources. Okay, then there might be some difference in the measurement, right? That's come the statistical discrepancy. Okay, so such kind of thing you should be aware of. I will, since we mentioned this thing, I will like to tell you one more story. This is a so important story. There is a Professor Angus Deaton. Professor, he's a Nobel laureate and he has worked. He has written many essays on the issue of Indian poverty. So he went on to mention this issue in his novel lecture as well. What he said? See, in India there are two systems. One is NAS, National Accounting System, and another is Household Survey. Household Survey. Okay, right? I'm talking about the Professor Angus Deaton. Okay, he's a Nobel laureate, NL, and he worked on the Indian poverty, right? He made it very important. You must try to write such points in main answer sheet. If you write 1 mark exercise, see how important this is for India. He went on to mention this thing in his novel lecture. He spent his life in some work, he got an award, and then in that lecture he's mentioning this thing about India. What he said, let's say in India the poverty is there, right? So what he said, let's say there are two methods of measuring poverty, right? One system is National Accounting System, okay? Another is household surveys. So generally what happens, here also you conduct survey, here also you take data. Generally what happens in many countries, and not only in India, many countries have system like this, two different systems. So gradually what happens, the difference between the values of, measurement of poverty diverges, right? Increases. So, and it is happening across the world. But in Indian case, there is a big difference. So big that NAS says, more or less, I don't want to go into detail at this point. NAS says, National Accounting System says, more or less, that the poverty is decreasing, right? So in 2000, they call it, this decade of, poverty reduction. But household survey says, the household survey says, no, the poverty is not decreasing. What they say, let's say growth is happening, and the poverty is not decreasing. So what is happening? Inequality is coming, right? Let's say somebody says, okay, in a family, money is coming, and there is a person who is not getting fat, right? So what that means? He or she is not getting food, right?
Someone is saying where is money?
Right. So that's what growth is increasing, right? Poverty, no decrease. Then what this implies? Inequality, right? Generally, what happens? This is a technical survey. Mainly, professor and statistician work on this. This somebody says, it is. I would not use the word that it is not very authentic.
What is the tools and techniques to measure the surveillance NAS?
See, now this is a fully statistical package. This is a very large question. But anyway, simply what is the procedure? People go, they take survey, right? Then using a statistical technique, right? Mainly Gini coefficient, poverty gap ratio, they will measure something. See, there was a poverty estimation in India by Professor Suresh Tendulkar, right? As far as my understanding of economics and statistics, it is one of the most rigorous report, not only in India, but in the world. The way, the way he has gone into the details, the way, he has studied, right? He was a professor at Delhi University and he has a PhD from Harvard, right? So even in bureaucracy, you cannot find that kind of rigorousness. So he has gone into the details. He has studied, how to measure. And so sometime, as an aspirant, you must go and try to see a few pages of that report. Okay. So this is a very technical thing, right? To measure, all these statistical things, one has to have spend a life in economics and statistics, right? Without a, academic background, one cannot do that. Here also, but again, one more thing, these are not, so rigorous, but this data is used by World Bank. Okay. This is the data used by World Bank, not only in India, but across the countries. So what they are saying here, according to this survey, poverty is not reducing. But according to this survey, poverty is reducing. So how the poor will know? So only the way is to look at the society, right? What is happening. So even so what he said, what the professor mentioned, now the poverty reduction is no more a matter of poverty reduction. It is a matter of measurement. Let's say somebody says, see, there are two systems. One is saying poverty is reducing. Another is saying poverty is not reducing. So what even the politician or so that's what he made an observation. Poverty reduction is no more a matter of poverty, poverty reduction. It is a matter of measurement. यदि सही से measure हो जाएगा तो मालूम पड़ जाएगा ना कि poverty reduce होना है. So that's a big thing, such kind of observation. Try to, mention such thoughts in your somewhere essay paper or maybe, GS3 mains paper or maybe interview, if you share such thought, I'm pretty sure, 1 or 2 marks are extra. Now coming to the, once this thing is over, now, although, we cannot go into details at present, but before the next lecture, I will leave you with some thoughts so that, before next time when you come, you revise them. There are 2 ways of measurement of GDP. One is expenditure method and one is income method. Let's say you have to measure the GDP now. GDP you have to measure and there are 2 methods. One is expenditure method. Okay. I'm just scribbling, but you guys are able to understand, right? Expenditure method and income method, right? So if you know the subject, then if you know the first word, then you can understand the full word, right? Expenditure method, what it says, generally GDP will indicate by Y, right? Income or GDP, right? It is given by the C plus I plus G plus NX. Okay. Just a minute. And here you use same C plus S plus T. Okay. Let's assume this is an open economy. If this is a closed economy, we will not take NX. Right. What it means, GDP, Y, is given by consumption. C stands for consumption. Consumption by what? Everyone in the society. Right. And this is the biggest part of GDP. Let's say every day we are consuming something. I just consumed water, right? I have consumed it, right? So somebody produced it, I have consumed it. So that the full circle of the economy. So this is fine. This is both private, all type of consumption. Investment, right? Public-private investment. Let's say investment means, somebody, let's say, establishes a factory, establishes a school, hospital, right? That is called investment. government spending. G stand for government spending. Let's say, see, this become very, very important during, recession. When nobody is ready to invest, private sector is not investing that time, government comes into picture, right? So let's say government is spending in infrastructure, health, right? Establishing hospital, colleges, right? That is government spending. Railways, transportation system, and yes, cyber security networks. Okay, but in government spending you will not include subsidies, right? That is not the part of that is not the part of that is the important point. That is different thing. Okay, this NX stand for exports minus import. That is net, right? Net. This is export minus export minus import. Okay, can you tell me why to get the GDP, why you are subtracting import?
Because export is we are earning. I mean,
Okay, we are saying when you export you are earning something,
yes, sir.
but and import you pay something, right?
Yeah.
But that's fine. But see, here our purpose is to calculate GDP. And what is the definition of GDP? Value of goods and services produced at the market price. So, see, what that thought is correct. That export is, for import we have to pay. But here our purpose is to calculate GDP. And while calculating this, I'm subtracting import. How these two thoughts are connected? See, let's say suppose you imported something. Let's say I imported, let's say anything. Let's say electronic gadget, right? I'm consuming that thing. So in consumption, I already, when I take the consumption, let's say I consumed a phone and it was imported. So I have already consumed that, right? So why then I have to subtract that import part, right? Got my point? Because how you got that phone? Through import. And you have consumed that already. So you have already accounted that thing in consumption. So you have to subtract from that. Okay, this is the logic. Fine. So this is the we have not discussed this thing rigorously. I am just at present establishing the structure. In 3-4 lectures we will establish the structure. Then we will move into frameworks and equations. So this is fine. Any problem? This is fine, right? Now from the income part, this is consumption, saving, and taxes, right? This is and you can calculate it both ways. Generally, if the economy is closed, when the economy is closed, do not take export import part. How do you write? You write C plus I plus G Y GDP is equal to C plus S plus T. Okay, this is your general equation. This is from expenditure method. This is your income method. Any problem so far?
Please explain it.
See, this is your income part, right? This is your saving. This is your taxes. Okay, this is your consumption, right? So this is very simple to understand. You had some earning. Let's say you had some income. Let's say GDP is also for a person. GDP is income, right? You had some income. Where you will put it? In consumption or saving, or otherwise pay taxes. Simple. A child can understand. Here from expenditure method. Who can expenditure? If somebody is expended, so it has gone into consumption or income, investment, or government expended, right? It's very logical. Okay. Now this thing is fine. Now let me see. I will upload these notes on the YouTube link. Okay. One more thing you must know: nominal GDP and real GDP. Okay. Nominal GDP. See, इसमें student काफी तो इसमें confuse जाते हैं. What is nominal? What is real? Okay. So what the definition of GDP we discussed? Current, or value of goods and services produced at market prices, right?
In our country.
Right. So what we said? Market prices, right? Current market prices. So what we measure is nominal GDP when we put current market prices. But लेकिन हमारा prices हर समय change होता रहेगा, तो हमें तो GDP पता ही नहीं चलेगा. Let's say I said, my GDP at present is, let's say $1.3 trillion. Price change हो गया. Potato का price बढ़ गया. So next one. So that's why there becomes a problem. So that's why what we do generally, in all over country, all over, across the world, they measure GDP at constant prices. When you measure GDP at constant prices, GDP at constant prices, it gives you real GDP. Okay, when you measure GDP at current prices, it gives you nominal. Okay, nominal GDP. Okay, and see, now this is the definition thing. What you have done here? You have made the prices constant, right? The only difference is you have made the prices constant. So, इसका use क्या है? See, what I will do. See, इससे आपके 2-3 कंसेप्ट निकलते हैं. एक तो निकलता है जो आपको पता होना चाहिए यूपीएससी के लिए, जीडीपी इन्फ्लेटर. ओके, दिस कंसेप्ट यू मस्ट नो. सेकंड, द रिलेशन बिटवीन नॉमिनल एंड रियल. ये क्या है? व्हाट इज दिस रिलेशन? कैन यू एक्सप्लेन? See, nominal is equal to real plus inflation, right? Okay. ये इक्वेशन जीडीपी की नहीं, ये नॉमिनल और रियल की जो इक्वेशन है, ये आपके अभी यूपीएससी ने क्वेश्चन पूछा था प्रीलिम्स में नीर और रीर पे, राइट? नॉमिनल एक्सचेंज रेट और रियल एक्सचेंज रेट. सो दैट रिलेशनशिप बिटवीन नॉमिनल एंड रियल, सी नॉमिनल इज इक्वल टू रियल प्लस इन्फ्लेशन. This is a fundamental concept. Whether you apply this concept in GDP measurement or exchange rate, लेकिन ये nominal is always equal to real plus inflation. इसको याद रखिएगा, ठीक है? याद रहेगा? ठीक है. Now what you do, just give me 1 second. I'm reading one paragraph. One professor has written on this nominal GDP. Just listen carefully. Okay, what he says. Nominal GDP measures currently produced goods and services evaluated at current market prices. ठीक है? That is fine. Nominal GDP measures at the current market prices. Right? Any problem? That's wonderful. Therefore, GDP measurement at current market prices will change. Important point. Listen. GDP measurement and current market prices will change when the overall price level changes as well as when the volume of production changes. See, what is happening? Let's say this is year 2001. Okay, this is year 2002. Here you had some prices. Let's say quantity और price. आपके कुछ गुड्स थे, मान लीजिए थ्री गुड्स थे, ठीक है? उसका क्वांटिटी प्राइस दे रखा है. ये आप सिंपल मान सकते हो, इलेक्ट्रॉनिक गुड्स मान सकते हो, राइट? कुछ भी, यानी 3 डिफरेंट गुड्स. उसी तरह यहाँ पे भी क्वांटिटी और प्राइस दोनों चेंज हो रहा है, ठीक है? Because see, quantity will also change ना. वो जरूरी थोड़ा है. Suppose I was consuming 1 cell phone in 2001, I might need 2 cell phone in 2002, right? So the quantity will change and the prices will also change. So it become very, very typical how you are going to calculate GDP. Because see, suppose the quantity is constant, कि आप जितना यहाँ पे क्वांटिटी कंज्यूम कर रहे हो उतना यहाँ पे कंज्यूम कर रहे हो, तो फिर आप प्राइसेस के अकॉर्डिंगली बता सकते हो, राइट? लेकिन अब क्या चेंज हो रहा है? क्वांटिटी भी चेंज हो रही है और प्राइस भी चेंज हो रही है. तो इट बिकम वेरी टिपिकल. गॉट माय पॉइंट? So nominal में क्या होता है? So that's what he making observation. Therefore, GDP measurement at current market prices will change when the overall price level change as well as when the volume of production change. So for many purposes we want a measure of GDP that varies only with the quantity of good produced. तो हमें क्या कौन सा चाहिए? जो केवल क्वांटिटी के साथ वेरी करे, प्राइस को हमें कांस्टेंट करना है. That's why we become GDP, real GDP. Got my point? आपको समझ आया इसका जरूरत क्यों पड़ा? Why we start measuring nominal? Okay, आपको okay, इसमें दोनों चीज वेरी हो रही है, क्वांटिटी वेरी हो रही है, तो हमें एक चीज को कांस्टेंट करना पड़ेगा. Right. That's why we have the constant GDP at constant prices is called real GDP. Okay, so let me. Okay, ये अभी मेंस में क्वेश्चन भी आया था. I think at 21 में आया, right? 21 में there were the changes in the GDP measurements in 2005, right? So these are the first question in your GS3 paper. GS3 paper first question. What it said? What the changes in the GDP measurement? India has made some GDP measurement changes in 2005. So there are mainly two changes. One is the base year has been changed from 2005 to base year. क्या क्या changes हुए हैं इंडिया के GDP measurement में? बेस ईयर कहाँ से कहाँ चेंज हुआ है? 2005-6 से 11-12. Okay. और दूसरा they have adopted GBA method. What is GBA method? That we will discuss when the time will come. Okay. So ये दोनों चीज आपको पता होना चाहिए. तो ये कंसेप्ट क्लियर है? सी अभी वी हैव नॉट गॉन डिग्रेसली, अभी हमने केवल फाउंडेशन एस्टेब्लिश कर रहे हैं, बट ग्रेजुअली वी विल डू। अच्छा ये क्या हो गया, जीडीपी इन्फ्लेटर, ये समझ में आ गया, नॉमिनल और जीडीपी। तो एक पॉइंट और लिख लीजिए आप, जीडीपी इन्फ्लेटर, जीडीपी इन्फ्लेटर इज इक्वल टू व्हाट बताइए, और इसका मीनिंग क्या है? नॉमिनल जीडीपी अपॉन रियल जीडीपी। एज यू सॉ नॉमिनल इज मोर देन राइट, नॉमिनल इज मोर राइट, नॉमिनल। तो इसमें क्या है, लेट्स से आपको, आपने कोई जीडीपी मेजरमेंट किया, ठीक है, तो उसमें यदि रियल लाना है तो उसको क्या करना पड़ेगा, डिफ्लेट करना पड़ेगा, राइट। सो अच्छा मैंने इन्फ्लेटर लिख दिया यहाँ पे, डिफ्लेटर होना चाहिए ना, सॉरी डिफ्लेट हो रहा है ना, राइट, उसको डिफ्लेट करना है, राइट, नॉमिनल बड़ा है, राइट। सो एंड हाउ यू गेट दिस, यू नो योर नॉमिनल जीडीपी, यू नो योर रियल जीडीपी, उनका जो यू नो डिवीजन विल गिव यू जीडीपी डिफ्लेटर, ठीक है। सो ओके, वन मोर पॉइंट यू मस्ट अंडरस्टैंड, अभी हमने क्या बोला कि हम लोग बेस ईयर लेते हैं टू यू नो फॉर योर फॉर रियल जीडीपी, राइट, टू मेक द प्राइसेस कांस्टेंट, so that only quantity will vary. So GDP is kind of a flow measure, and see I have used the word flow measure. Flow measure is an important word, लेकिन उसको अभी हम यहाँ पे एक्सप्लेन नहीं कर सकते क्योंकि इसको करेंगे तो 15 मिनट चला जाएगा, लेकिन आप समझ लो कि GDP is a flow measure and we will discuss it some other day. What is more important is to understand that when we use a base year, then also it does not solve the problem. See, पहली प्रॉब्लम क्या थी हमारी कि आपके क्वांटिटी और प्राइसेस दोनों वेरी हो रहे थे, ठीक है, तो हमारी प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि इसको कैसे मेजर करें। फिर हमने क्या बोला, चलो भाई प्राइस को कांस्टेंट कर देते हैं, तो क्या मांगे, रियल जीडीपी। कैसे कांस्टेंट किया, एक बेस ईयर लेके, कि हम जो जीडीपी मेजर करेंगे कुछ ईयर्स तक के लिए, इस बेस ईयर से तुम्हारे प्राइसेस तो एटलीस्ट कांस्टेंट रहेंगे, क्वांटिटी वेरी रहेगी, एंड दैट विल मेजर। ओके, जनरली ये जो क्वांटिटी का वेरी है, अभी हमने देखा ना 2001 और 2 के लिए क्वांटिटी और प्राइस, हमने क्वांटिटी को कांस्टेंट बना लिया था, राइट, क्वांटिटी सेम है, सॉरी प्राइस को सेम बना लिया था और क्वांटिटी हमारी वेरी होती है। लेकिन इसमें एक चीज और समझिए, ये भी हमारी प्रॉब्लम को पूरा रिजॉल्व नहीं कर रहा है। क्यों? कि सपोज कि अभी हमने बेस ईयर को कहां से कहां ले गए, 2005 से 2011-12 में ले गए। आप देख रहे हो कितना प्राइस में चेंज हुआ होगा, 2005 से इसमें जो अभी 6 साल पहले प्राइस ना, कितना, तो एक साथ कितना चेंज आएगा डेटा में। सो व्हाट हैपेंस, इकोनॉमिस्ट कॉल्स इट हिस्ट्री रीरिटन। व्हाट दे कॉल्स इट, व्हेनेवर यू चेंज द बेस ईयर, हिस्ट्री रीरिटन, दिस इज द फ्रेज दे यूज। व्हाट इट मींस कि जब आपने प्राइस का जो बेस है वही चेंज कर दिया ना, जैसे सपोज समबडी सेज, मान लीजिए ये हमने अभी बेस ईयर चेंज किया, अभी चेंज किया ना 2011 का, मान लीजिए वो प्राइसेस था चल रहा था, सपोज द प्राइसेस वर गोइंग ऑन, लेट्स से पोटैटो वाज गोइंग ऑन 20 रुपीस पर केजी, एंड नाउ ऑल ऑफ ए सडन द you change the base year and now the price of potato is 45 rupees per kg. आप देख रहे हो 100 से भी almost right, कितना प्राइस चेंज हो गया, तो that is a big problem. So that's why whenever you change a base year there is a history rewritten, right? So this is, so to overcome this challenge, what the economists do, and this is a practice being observed almost in OECD countries and some many OECD countries, right? India is still not following it. It is called chain weighted GDP measurement. What it is called? Chain weighted GDP measurement. Chain weighted GDP measurement, what to say? See, rather than having a fixed base year, what we will do? We will take the averages of that particular year, one after that and before that, right? So we will take a weighted average. So this is the practice which India and this is my opinion, other countries will start following, maybe up to 5 to 10 years, right? So this is your chain weighted real GDP measurement. After this, now see, now what we'll do, we will stop here. But before the next class, I would like you to, to read something about the production. We will go into the classical school. Okay, classical school. I would like you to study something about what is production function, Okay, let's say I write this thing. Y is equal to F K bar Y. This is capital stock. This is your N, right? This is your labor. Okay, why I'm putting bar? Okay, and you must also study about production function. What is MPN, margin, right? MPN of labor. Then you must also study something about. Okay, you must also study why classical school focus on supply. Classical school focus on supply and not on classical school focus on supply and not on aggregate demand. You remember we read that paragraph for John Stuart Mill. What he said, there is no need to create market for consumption, right? So what happens, this classical school does not focus on supply side. They focus on demand side. Okay, so this thing is there, and try to read something about this. What is classical production function? What is MPN? What is increasing, constant rate, diminishing return, negative returns? Okay, and then maybe in the next class we will try to move into components of aggregate demand. So these are the things we will take up. Okay, thank you very much.